The candidates for Philadelphia mayor, answering the important questions. Education, where is the money? The future of Philly's workforce, and fixing your taxes. Comcast, the Greater Philadelphia Chamber of Commerce, and NBC10 present the 2015 debate for Philadelphia mayor.
And welcome to our live coverage from the Kimmel Center on Broad Street in Center City. I'm NBC10's Jim Rosenfield, and this is our home for tonight's debate for Philadelphia mayor. You know, we are 6 weeks away from a primary election that will play a key role in the future of our city. And we are so pleased tonight to have all 6 Democratic candidates in the race here with us on stage. And they are standing in alphabetical order from left to right, starting with former District Attorney Lynn Abraham, the former head of the city court system, Nelson Diaz, former City Councilman Jim Kenney, the former Vice President of Marketing and Communications for PGW, Doug Oliver, former State Senator Milton Street, and current State Senator Anthony Williams. Now, we only have an hour, and we all agree we have a lot of ground to cover, so we'll get right to it. Quick reminder, you have 1 minute to answer each question, and we will begin with this. I think all of you would agree that education is really a key issue in this election. The $84 million budget shortfall is really a cloud that's hanging over our city and over the education system. As you know, Mayor Nutter has approved or has proposed a 9.3% property tax increase to fill that hole. That's his solution. I want to know, is that your solution? And if not, where would you find the money? Let's start with you, Lynn Abraham.
Thank you, Jim, and thanks to NBC10. I believe that the recommendation of our mayor that we put another 9.3% tax on real estate is really regressive, and it hurts the people that most need to hold on to their dollars. I think that I've urged City Council to take up the issue of school funding before the May primary, but unfortunately they did not. I do believe that our governor has proposed a plan that will help with the issues of school funding. And he proposes a percentage of a real estate tax that will be much lower. So the mayor is proposing a real estate tax higher, and the governor is proposing a real estate tax lower.
So where would you find the money?
What I'm going to do on day one is convene a group of stakeholders who have been talking about and thinking about taxes for a very long time to have a rational and fair tax policy so that we can have a recurring and always available tax base for us to pay for our schools, to make sure that our people have adequate coverage in every aspect of education, and make sure that our children have a relentless advocate in education by me as their mayor.
I don't hear any dollar figures or any percentages.
Oh, well, I think the issue of percentage is a little premature. We know that we have to put, at least I've recommended, at least $20 million into early childhood education. If we do a smart job about finding the kinds of savings that I think we will have, if we do the kinds of thinking about how we save tax dollars, how we trim our government, and how we can save and invest those monies back into the school system by, for example, raising the use and occupancy tax and decoupling other taxes and making sure that we have a rational, fair policy for everything. So we'll have to see what the governor gets from the legislature, and then we'll see what kinds of monies we need to have as a recurring basis for our education.
All right, Nelson Diaz, do you agree with the mayor's property tax proposal? And if not, where would you find the money?
No, I do not agree with it. What I would do essentially is look what's best for the children. And what's best for the children is to have a fully funded program. If you look on my website at nelsondiazformayor.com, you will see that I have an 8-point proposal on funding. And that 8-point proposal includes the $185 million that the governor has proposed. It includes a pension fund management change that will give us $150 million. And why that? Because I've done it at Exelon. At Exelon, I was able to change a functioning pension fund, which was only 65% funded, and got it to 85% funded in 2 years, just by making sure that you process through the management. Right now, our pension fund doesn't even move, even with the market moving ahead. We should also look at properties that are needed to be collected. And all of those properties will give us an opportunity to collect another $75 million. If you look at the website, you will see point by point what I'm doing in this time period. I can't give you all of the items.
All right, Jim Kenney, do you agree with the mayor's proposal? And if
No,
not-
and I want to say for the outset that I had voted for a tax increase in an election year for real estate taxes when the choice was the schools would either close or we needed the extra money. But I don't think after the actual value initiative and what that's impacted our neighborhood folks, we should be doing an increase in real estate taxes again. There are places in the government that we can get this money. For example, zero-based budgeting worked quite well in Montgomery County, saved Montgomery County budget and taxpayers 3% a year. We can do that here in Philadelphia, and that means building the budget up from the bottom and not from the top down. I think we can do reverse auctioning for our procurement process, where it's a live on-time auction where it's not a closed bid where people open the bid on one day, but they sit around and compete with each other for city work. I think we can, and those two things, one is $40 million for the zero-based budgeting.
You can accomplish that in 1 year, go through the entire city budget?
Montgomery County, we budgeted for a 2% savings. Montgomery County was a 3%, and a 2% savings, which I think is conservative. We can hit that number. I also think the sale of securitized commercial liens, not residential liens where people were put out of their homes, but the sale of securitization of commercial liens could also bring another $40 million.
That's a one-time
That's a one-time thing, but also I think that the issue relative to the tax abatement is very important we look at. I don't want to get rid of the tax abatement. I like the tax abatement. I think it's done really, really well. But the land that the abated properties are built on are sorely underassessed. And if we could reassess the land, the person's still getting the tax abatement, still getting that benefit, but we can do that. We can raise perhaps another 15 to 20 million, and that's a recurring number. So I also want to see what the governor's going to do. I mean, I think the governor's going to be successful in bringing some dollars back to the city. So let's wait and see what happens.
We'll have to see. Yeah. Doug Oliver, how about you? Do you agree with Mayor Nutter's 9+% property tax hike?
Well, I'd rather start with where we agree. We agree that educating our kids is paramount. It's the first and foremost, most important thing that we as a city have to do if we want to grow. That said, I think before we get to a conversation about raising taxes, we have to explore any number of other options, some of which are recurring funds, some of which are one-time. I agree with some of the others who've mentioned that we have a governor who seems committed to doing the same, so I think we have reason to be hopeful that we'll get the money that needs to come from the state, and he seems prepared to make sacrifices as necessary to deliver that. It's the role of the mayor to support him in those efforts. That said, I think that we could also look at pilots and silots, payments in lieu of taxes from our post-secondary education and medical institutions that are nonprofits, but sometimes develop like for-profit institutions.
But they fought back against that notion,
well, obviously, and I don't think that's a surprise that they would fight back for it. They do a lot for our communities, and again, it doesn't necessarily have to be payments in lieu of taxes, it could be services. At the end of the day, what we're trying to do is have a school system that works, and sometimes it's a money issue, but sometimes it's a management and a curriculum issue. We need to figure out which is which. But before we raise taxes, let's explore that option. Let's look at all the delinquent taxes that haven't been paid, and although that is also one-time money, there are other more creative ways of generating money, like keeping the city open past 2 a.m. and using the liquor by the drink tax to fund our schools. Tax abatements, as they currently stand, could be revisited and viewed as a way of generating money for our school system.
All right, Doug Oliver. Milton Street, do you agree with the mayor's proposal?
No.
And where would you find the money instead?
Many shall perish for lack of knowledge. What happens is we don't go to the very basics. You have to look at, we have a minority school system here. We have 75,000 blacks, 25,000 Hispanics, 19,000 Caucasian, and others. So you have a minority school that you have to raise taxes, and minorities own very little bit of taxes. So what you need is an independent funding source. And you get that independent funding source by enabling legislation. I made this speech 32 years ago in Harrisburg when we were $20 million deficit. I framed a piece of legislation called Video Bingo before we ever had gambling that would have raised $100 million on the low side, $360 million on the high side that would have been dedicated to the school district. The Philadelphia legislators beat that down, okay? So we have to understand basically that you're never going to fund Philadelphia schools through taxes. That's out. Forget it. Minorities don't own enough real estate or enough anything to have enough taxes to fund that school district.
So very quickly, in today's economy, where would you find those dollars?
Independent funding source. I would go to Harrisburg, I would use my experience in Harrisburg, and I would get enabling legislation that would allow us to raise enough money to fund our schools with the help of Harrisburg, with the minimum amount they give us to fund our schools. And I wouldn't tax cigarettes.
Thank you. Senator Williams, do you agree with the mayor's proposal? And if not, where would you find the money?
I don't. And I don't think anyone's commented on this, but actually the mayor's proposal far exceeds the necessity to raise the money for $80 million. What he's proposed is well above the $80 million gap, so that's the first part. The second part is the governor has a proposal that will drive out money to Philadelphia. The weighted funding formula that I'm a part of will be a part of that conversation. The using of municipal assets is not a one-time bearing of funds. Actually, the one-time bearing of funds closes the gap in our city general fund. Paying down our pension obligations brings out money, but in addition to that, it also allows us to use the general fund so we can fill potholes and fund schools appropriately. A municipal bank and a growth strategy are also a part of it. I also say this in closing. Enabling legislation is exactly what I did when it came to the cigarette tax. And so I'm not sure how you can say you don't want it. You want enabling legislation, but you don't want a cigarette tax. The $45 million one-time grant that I brought home, and also the 1% sales tax are all enabling legislation that we...
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to pause for a quick break, and we'll be right back. Is there a doctor in the house, by the way? You got one? I got one. So everybody just tell them to be... Can you give us 3 minutes here? Question, if you don't mind. Let you finish your thought after we... And welcome back, everybody. I'm Jim Rosenfield to our live coverage of the debate for Philadelphia mayor. We paused there because, unfortunately, one of our candidates, Lynn Abraham, fell ill. She's not feeling well, so she has stepped back. She's resting right now. She is going to be okay. We had a doctor check her out, but she will be staying off stage for now because we don't want to put her in that position of not feeling well. So we're going to continue on with our remaining 5 candidates, unforeseen and unfortunate, but we do thank you all for your patience during that period. Senator Williams, we interrupted you as you were finishing your thought about funding education.
So I would say first that all of us who are in this audience are hoping that the district attorney is one tough cookie, remains to be one tough cookie. And I think it's most appropriate that people recognize we're just people, not invincible in terms of this activity. And so I'm sure she'll be fine. And most appropriately, we're all cheering for her today collectively. The last thing I was bringing up was the issue of tax increases, and I think people need to remember this. Councilman Kenny just mentioned the fact that he would change the abatement process. He wasn't for tax increases, but if you change the abatement process and you raise the value of the property underneath it, it is in fact a tax increase, which I think many people who think the abatement process has worked effectively in Philadelphia, it needs to change, need to go to neighborhoods. We need to recognize the consequence of that is significant to businesses who have thrived and driven. All those towers we see across Philadelphia have a large consequence around the abatement process as it's currently constructed, working well.
Thank you. You know, we asked our viewers to weigh in with some of the issues, some of the questions that are on their minds through the NBC10 app, and they want you to answer some of these questions. And a lot of people have concerns about taxes. Rachel asked, quote, why isn't the city wage tax cut or eliminated? Major companies are not here, she says, in this city because of it. And also our partners at the Greater Philadelphia Chamber of Commerce say the wage tax and the abatement tax really are stifling growth. So as mayor, we want to know which taxes will you work to reform or lower? Let's start with you, Mr. Diaz.
I agree with that comment. The regressiveness of the business taxes and the wage taxes deny us the opportunity to grow our economy. In Philadelphia, 66% of the city budget is made up of those taxes, while only 16% is made up of the real estate taxes. What we need to do essentially is do what other cities do. 34% of the real estate taxes makes up the budget of a city. So we need to be able to have a reform with regard to these taxes and begin to tax the commercial properties in a way in which we eliminate the business tax, try to essentially reform the tax that the uniform Constitution doesn't allow us to reform, change that, do that as soon as possible, because if we don't start that, we're going to continue to lose the city from businesses and business opportunities. This is what you have to do and what most cities do. You go across the city line and people don't have to pay the 4% wage tax.
Councilman Kenny.
Well, I think to be an effective mayor, you need to have balance. And to say you're going to get rid of the wage tax entirely or even knock a point off it in 4 years, you better be prepared to cut services to a large degree where people won't be very happy living in a city with no services. Believe it or not, we've been reducing taxes in the city since 1998, I believe, under the Rendell administration, when wage and business taxes were going down, albeit very slow and very small amounts, but we're going in the right direction. I think as the economy gets better and we have more money to plow into tax reduction, based on the balance of our services levels that we offer our citizens, I think we can accelerate the tax reductions that way. I agree we should look at uniformity clause relief from Harrisburg to do something different with our commercial real estate.
That does take two votes in Harrisburg to amend the Constitution.
3 or 4 years. I mean, so that's not an immediate thing, and that's fine. We should still pursue it. But I think you got to continue to balance service cuts, tax cuts, service levels and tax cuts so that we have a livable city.
So it doesn't sound like you want to lower the wage tax at this point right away.
We've been lowering the wage tax since 1998.
But further.
Down about a point. And further, it needs to be lowered. But if you're going to be realistic and say you're going to knock a point off that tax in a year or 4 years, I don't see it without the level of service, unless the economy grows in such a degree that you can plow more money back into business and wage tax cuts.
Thank you. Doug Oliver?
Yeah, I think we've taxed ourselves into oblivion here in the city of Philadelphia. We have no less than 2 different tax reform commissions that have occurred over the last decade. We've studied it and we've studied it, and we just haven't implemented. We know that businesses aren't coming here because we're uncompetitive, that we tax the things that are easiest to move, which are people through the wage tax, businesses through regressive business taxes. We know that we have undervalued property. here that has a little more elasticity that could stand an increase in property tax. I support the Chamber of Commerce's vision to do a dollar for dollar decrease in business and wage with a dollar for dollar increase then in property. At the end of the day, though, we can talk about it. We can talk about it and talk about it, and we have, but until we address that issue, we're going to have difficulty attracting those businesses to the city. But I also want to use this opportunity to say that it's not just our tax environment that prevents the businesses and those all-important jobs from coming. It's also our schools, and hopefully we'll have a little bit more opportunity to talk about the role that education plays in attracting businesses to the city.
All right, thank you. Milton Street.
Yeah, I have about 5,000 people in my community. You give them a job, they'd be glad to pay wage taxes. What we need to do is, as mayor, you're not going to be able to correct everything. That's a job that I would give to the city controller. The city controller should supposed to handle that, bring back recommendations, and deal with that. You know how many years we've been haggling and fighting and fussing over the wage tax? It's just something that goes on and on and on and on. Let's create some jobs.
Senator Williams.
We have been haggling about the wage tax for a long time, and it is far too long we've been talking about it. It is the only city in America that depends upon the wage tax. 40% of our tax is levied around the wage tax, the only city in America, which of course says if you live on the edge and you're taxed, that you might as well move. And if you are able to move, you're not going to be here. So the status quo just does not work. And yes, we have to dramatically cut that wage tax to bring people back to Philadelphia. It's not a fairy tale for people to understand the energy hub that we talk about, and we will talk about tonight, will drive people back to Philadelphia. We have to spread this across Philadelphians. The wage tax is the one thing that people will talk about consistently that will allow them to stay in Philadelphia or move back to Philadelphia. So the question is it the chicken or the egg? The bottom line is, my policy is, we're going to go, and I guess because I'm a business guy, I understand this. You have to invest before you can have an economy which grows. The bottom line is someone here has to talk about a growth strategy for Philadelphia. You can't cut taxes, you can't raise taxes or cut programs anymore. You have to have a plan to grow an economy, and I have one.
All right, the workforce really is changing here in Philadelphia. Comcast, our parent company, as you know, right now is in the midst of building a huge tower in our city, the Innovation and Technology Center just down the block. They are going to need highly skilled workers to fill that building. So how would you, as mayor, ensure that those highly skilled workers don't go to some other city instead? Let's start with you, Mr. Oliver.
Happy to start off there. You jumped around on the order on me. I got caught
Keeps
sleeping.
it interesting.
Fair enough. I think one of the challenges, and I'll segue here with education once again, we've got an agricultural model here that says kids need to be out of school by 2 p.m. so they can be in the field with their parents. We've got a curriculum that's based around manufacturing. So we teach to the test, focus on standardized testing so kids don't have to think or learn how to learn. But the reality is the environment that they're going to need to be prepared for is totally different than everything we're preparing them for right now. So when we talk about having an educated workforce, we have to start by thinking about what are those jobs that we're preparing them for. And quite frankly, we don't even know what some of those jobs are. I had the benefit of being at NextFab, a new startup tech company here in the city of Philadelphia, and some of the businesses that were there and the things that they have on tap for the future are mind-boggling. And the impact on cities and how efficient we are is absolutely mind-boggling. We need to prepare our students for those, and I see I'm out of time, but we have to start with that spirit of entrepreneurialism, technology, and innovation in the classroom and start that identity as early as pre-K.
Let's move to Mr. Street.
Yeah, I need clarity on the question. I need to know what Philadelphia you're talking about. Are you talking about the Philadelphia from South Street to Vine Street and river to river? Or are you talking about the Philadelphia out in the community, out where I live, out where in Kensington, out in Southwest Philadelphia, out in South Philadelphia? Are you talking about creating jobs in that community? There are two reasons why people and businesses won't come, and one is the inability to hire a productive workforce, and the second one is crime, high crime. So when you're talking about keeping the productive workforce in Philadelphia, you have to stop crime. You can't have people walking his dog getting shot dead. You can't have pregnant women sitting on the corner getting shot dead. You can't have 3-year-olds sitting on the steps getting shot dead, 15-year-olds coming home from school. Until you do something about that crime, then your Philadelphia is restricted when it's growth. It won't go out into the community where we actually need the jobs. And I have more to say about that, but the red light's on.
Thank you for respecting your time. Senator Williams.
I think that we need to face the reality that we are not training our students who are graduating from public schools that align with where the jobs are. And so I would propose that we extend our high school experience about 2 years. Take the millions of dollars we're spending on job training currently and wasting it down a toilet that doesn't align with a job experience. So if you want to have them build the building, work in the building, or be an entrepreneur, let's align their experience in terms of their education so it's aligned as it used to be with what jobs are here. The tech community, the bio-life community, all are underpopulated with skilled employees. If we simply extend the high school experience about 2 years, align the money so that the public school or community college can certify those students, you will change the poverty index in Philadelphia, you will change neighborhoods across Philadelphia, and most importantly, they will stay here in Philadelphia.
Mr. Diaz?
We have a 28% poverty rate in our city. The School Reform Commission has R in the middle of it, and it has not reformed a thing in 13 years. You've got to terminate that Reform Commission. You've got to give the schools back to the parents and let the parents do the guidance and give local control and hold the mayor accountable for making sure that the schools work.
Can you
That's
give
the
us an
first thing.
example, sorry to interrupt, but an example of a city where that has worked, giving local control
I'll give
back
you
to the mayor?
schools that work. Right across the border, I represent a school called LEAP, which essentially has a pre-K program. The kids are taken from 3 to 8. They have a wraparound system, which essentially looks at the social economic issues of the children, looks at the needs and tailors the education for the need of that child so that that child can get the support, gets breakfast in the morning, gets lunch in the afternoon, and gets after-school activities, and she graduates 100% of those children. She had 2 gay scholars. And in Aspida has a school up, the Olney School. The Olney School was failing, and look what's happened. It's the best math school in the city today.
Jim Kenney, how do you keep the highly skilled workers from going elsewhere?
I think you have to start first from the 3 and 4-year-olds in the city that don't have any access to quality pre-K. I think you need to change a generation of people to make them readers and achievers. And you do that by getting kids at that age ready for school. So that's the first step. The other thing is talking to the business community because they're the people who know what the hiring needs are over the next decade. And then start tailoring your high school curricula, your community college curricula, and all the other certification processes that you need to get people certified and trained to take those jobs. But we do have a 28% poverty rate in the city, and those folks, some of those folks are not going to have a college degree. We need to find jobs that are family-sustaining, good-paying jobs, and one of the things I'd like to do is invest with the state and the private sector in the expansion of our commercial terminal down at Packer Avenue with our containerization terminal. Make it one of the best container ports on the East Coast. Those are the kinds of jobs that people can make $40, $50 an hour, can raise a family, buy a house, and pay us taxes. So I think that those are the kinds of areas we need to expand our reach in.
All right, we want to move on to some individual questions for each of you individually. Mr. Kenney?
Yes.
You've been known for having a bit of a temper.
No.
We've seen some of your off-color tweets about Governor Christie and his love of the Cowboys. You're passionate. We've seen some other rants. But I want to really, in all seriousness, ask you, is that appropriate behavior for a big city mayor? And how will you keep your emotions in check when big issues don't necessarily go your way?
Well, I think that Twitter is Twitter. It's not State of the Union address. It's not an address to council. It's Twitter. I mean, it's 140 characters of nonsense. Yeah, I was upset. I was upset that Governor Christie, was embracing Jerry Jones in our stadium in front of our team and our fans when he lives across the river, and we support their economy at the Jersey Shore. So yeah, so I sent that tweet. I've not got much complaint about it, to tell you the truth. I mean, people have kind of understood where I was coming from, but that's Twitter. It is. I've had a 23-year career in council dealing with issues affecting this entire city. And as mayor, you have the ability to do things that you want to do and get done, and your level of frustration hopefully goes down a little bit, but we'll deal with our problems as they come, and I think throughout this entire campaign I've conducted myself quite well, and I continue to intend to do so.
All right, and we'll let you tweet about it if you wish. All right, to Mr. Oliver. At a recent forum, you said, and I quote, "The sad truth is that police have good reason to fear black men." Now, that's a broad statement. I know there was more to the discussion that followed, so I want to ask, what exactly did you mean by that?
The question that was asked of me that evening was, how do you improve relationships between police and the communities that they serve. Perhaps inartfully, with 40 seconds to respond, I used words that misconstrued what I was trying to say. But essentially, if you want to fix a problem, you have to first acknowledge that one exists. When we look at the police department, we have to acknowledge that we have rogue officers who do not represent the larger police department, but yet still incite fear in the communities that they serve. On the other side of the equation, black on black crime is a challenge. And for police officers who have to manage around that, we have to at least acknowledge that they may be fearful as well. It was not meant to be prescriptive. It was not meant to suggest that police should treat African Americans or Latinos or anyone in their communities in any other way other than with respect and dignity. And I certainly was surprised that my comments were misconstrued, but blame it on the head, not the heart. In this case, I would do anything to ensure that African American men are safe in their communities, and that's really the bottom line.
All right, thank you. Mr. Williams, much of the criticism of your campaign centers on so-called dark money, unlimited funds that come in from supporters who supposedly have no connection whatsoever to the individual candidate's campaign. Among them, as we know, mainline millionaires who support charter schools. But I want to ask you, are third-party PACs helping or unduly influencing the race for mayor, in your opinion?
I would say that much has been written about that. And apparently, my money is not dark anymore. It's pretty transparent because they write about it like every day. There are other people who are running. I'm the only person on this stage who actually has paid for ads themselves. Matter of fact, on this station, a lot of money. And so I'm proud that we've raised money through my own campaign. There is another candidate on this stage, Jim Kenney, who does have ads up on television that are only paid by dark money, and no one seems to talk about who's behind that money. And it does affect outcomes because television is a reality. You have to be on television. Outside forces are now lining up because of the rules that we've created, make it very difficult for all of us to raise money to run these ads. But I'm proud of the fact that I've raised enough. I'm proud of the fact that I'm representing those communities, and more importantly, schools. Whatever type of public school it is, I'm proud to represent quality schools.
Mr. Kennedy, do you want to respond to that briefly?
Yeah, I'm sure. Citizens United decision was a Supreme Court decision that I had no control over, and I have no control over people spending money to put ads on television to either support myself or Senator Williams or anybody else. I was a person who was involved in campaign finance reform in Philadelphia. Along with Mayor Nutter, when he was a councilman, we changed the system. We limited the amounts of money that people could take. We limited PACs. We limited individuals. And we have come a long way in making the system a better system. The problem is the Supreme Court threw a wrench into that process. And I will tell you that I don't know exactly who it is that's funding my commercials, but I understand that they are working people. They could be teachers and workers and service workers and other things. They're not billionaires.
All right, to Mr. Diaz now. Within the past week at a previous forum, Senator Williams accused you of stealing his idea of creating a municipal bank.
It's true.
So we want to ask you point blank, did you get that idea yourself or did you steal it?
We've been meeting with a bunch of progressive groups, and based on meeting with those progressive groups, they have a pamphlet, and in the pamphlet they talked about the Iowa Municipal Bank and how the municipal bank should be utilized. That's what we refer to. But unlike Mr. Kenney and Mr. Williams, I don't support the voucher system, and that's how they get their opportunities to essentially take money out of the school system, which essentially hurts the public schools.
Mr. Street?
Yes.
As you well know, you did go to federal prison for failing to file federal tax returns on $3 million in income. You served your time.
That's
But
correct.
I want to ask you, why should Philadelphians trust you to follow the letter of the law now as mayor?
Why should they? Because I have a plan, and the plan is for my community where I live to stop the violence. Now, they don't have to trust me, but I can tell you this. I have a plan that can save your child. I have a plan that will make the streets safe. I have a plan that will create a relationship between the police and the community, okay? And so it's very, very simple. It's not even complicated. You want to save your child, or you want to talk about Milton Street went to federal prison. You know, you got 5 people up here that didn't go to federal prison, but they don't have a plan to save your child. I have a plan to save your child. I have a plan to make it safe for senior citizens to go to this grocery store without getting robbed. I have a plan to make it safe in the schools for our children to be able to maximize their God-given educational potential and teachers to be able to teach. I have a plan to bring back a relationship between the police and the community. We have marched, we have demonstrated, we have had candlelight services. Now we have a plan. It's your choice.
Thank you.
Can I comment?
Sir?
Do you mind? I think it's unfair when I've heard these articles written quite viciously about Senator Street's time served. We have a ton of Philadelphians who are reentering society, and he is an example of what one would do in terms of reconstituting their life. Could you imagine anyone in the neighborhood thinking that after they come back home, they pick themselves up, they pay their debt to society, and most importantly, they're running for mayor of the city of Philadelphia? I think that's admirable, not a negative.
Thank you. All right,
Don't vote for him, vote for me, though. I'm just making sure.
So we have a comedian in the group, too. All right. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
This next question is for Mr. Diaz, Mr. Kenny, Mr. Street. Experts say Philadelphia is really on the verge of becoming America's next energy hub. We've talked a little bit about this tonight. This could create thousands of new jobs. What will you do as mayor to see the growth of Philadelphia as an energy hub? All right, let's start with you, Mr. Diaz.
I don't have any problems with using the energy hub and developing the energy hub. My problem is that we can't continue to have more emissions and more pollution in the city. The fact of the matter is that this is the dirtiest city in Pennsylvania, and it's one of the dirtiest cities in America. We can't continue to put emissions out there. We need the jobs, we have to work with the jobs, but we should look for alternative fuels and alternative opportunities to make sure that we keep our city clean. Yes, we have to work on what happens, but you got to understand, this is a eds and meds city. Eds and meds are who are keeping our economy going. If we want to train the next workforce, you got to look at the eds and meds, and there are only 3 areas of economic development. It's at the Navy Yard, it's at University of Pennsylvania, it's Temple University, and Center City. That's all you have, and if you want to bring people into the employment force, you've got to train them for what exists right now. We don't have high technical capacity to be able to turn our economy around just like that.
Mr. Kenny, how do you feel about building an energy hub?
Well, I
here?
think the energy hub is an interesting concept, and I think we should pursue it. We should also pursue the opportunity to ensure that environmentally we're safe, that trains moving through our region are safe, the track, maybe lobby for track upgrades so that they don't go off the rails. So I think we can have both. We can have a safe, clean environment and at the same time create the jobs that the energy hub would create. I'd like to see PGW be more involved in that process. And since it hasn't been sold, to make that company look more like a private sector company in public sector hands. And I think that we can really work well with the energy companies that have come to this region by using PGW and their employees and their capital as an opportunity to do even better.
Mr. Street, how do you feel about Philadelphia becoming an energy hub?
I feel good about it. You know, I have all these visions of a solar bike path, you know, where we have these big solar panels and you ride your bike, you know. But come on, let's ask questions where something we can do in 8 years. You're going to be mayor for 8 years. You're not going to create any energy hub in Philadelphia in 8 years. I don't care what you do. I've looked at all of it, windmills and solar heat and all types of heat and energy and fracking and all that stuff. You're not going to do that in 8 years. Ask me a question that I can answer and I can get it done in 8 years and I'll be happy to deal with you.
Could you set the groundwork, though?
What?
Could you, as mayor, set the groundwork for seeing that come to fruition? Perhaps
I
not
could
during-
probably set the groundwork, but it took Senator Williams 17 years to raise the tax on people to smoke. You know, so you're raising the groundwork, setting the groundwork. What does that mean? Because every election we start over. Every election, every 8 years you start over. Come on, let's be real. You know, Eddie Rendell set the groundwork for a lot of stuff. Start over again. John Street set the groundwork for things. You know, his thing for the Penn's Landing, Netter came in and scrapped it all. So come on, give me something I can deal with in my 8 years.
All righty. Just want to update everybody that Ms. Abraham, I just got word, she's doing well. We're glad to hear that. She's still resting, but we wanted to update everybody that she is doing well. So that's good news. We wish you were here to answer the questions. So this next one is just for Mr. Oliver and Senator Williams.
I don't get to answer the last one?
No.
We had broken those down into
Oh,
smaller
my
groups.
apologies.
So if you're okay with that, we're just going
I'm
to give
okay.
you this next one to tackle. So if you're elected mayor, you'll become, obviously, Philadelphia's chief lobbyist in Harrisburg and an advocate for the city there. How will you sell Philadelphia to state lawmakers as a manufacturing hub? Let's start with you, Mr. Oliver, and then we'll get to you, Senator Williams.
I think when we talk about energy, and I think this question is actually related to the last one, when we talk about an energy hub, the idea of energy and its benefits have been readily apparent to the rest of the state. When you look at unemployment levels across Pennsylvania during the worst economic crisis that the country's ever seen, you saw that Pennsylvania fared very, very well during that time. But if you look at how Philadelphia did during that time, we were left out of the economic vitality of Marcellus Shale. I think just the existence of Marcellus Shale has kept gas prices so low that we as a city can do a much better job of attracting manufacturing jobs to the city. Those manufacturing jobs that I joked about earlier being gone that we're training kids for, we actually can use energy to attract those jobs back here. State lawmakers want to see Philadelphia do better, but they also want to see that we manage ourselves. Now, the idea of making PGW function more like a private entity while still owned by the city is a pipe dream. It wasn't brought up for discussion in City Council. I think that was an important misstep that really we missed an opportunity that makes the conversation in Harrisburg a little more difficult. But I don't think it's over. I think we can keep on pushing the agenda, attract the jobs, and use those low-skill manufacturing jobs to employ countless Philadelphians who've already been failed by the school system that need employment and need work.
Thank
Red
you.
light's been on for 30 seconds.
Thank you. Appreciate the extra help, Mr. Street. Senator Williams, how would you sell Philadelphia to Harrisburg as a manufacturing hub?
As I have done in other areas in Harrisburg. Everybody here knows that there's a Republican who controls the House and the Senate, and there used to be one who controlled the General Assembly. In spite of that, working with the members of the Philadelphia delegation, we were able to effectively bring back $250 million on education, $700 million on public transit. So I think I'm pretty good as a lobbyist, if you will, and certainly those relationships will not change. And by the way, they will be significant for the next mayor. That mayor has to work with city council, state government, and the federal government, and I've done all three of those levels. To convert it to being seen as a manufacturing hub, we have to embrace big ideas, and Philadelphia has to be seen as not afraid to embrace those big ideas. Certainly is to get city council, stakeholders to believe that PGW can be moved forward in a way that will allow natural gas to come through, export it out, and certainly create manufacturing jobs in Philadelphia because of the cheap cost of energy.
May I respond?
No.
Go ahead.
You know, Senator Williams is talking about the $250,000 he bought, but Governor Corbett cut everything for Philadelphia from your nose to your toes. He cut everything. Senator Williams and all the other legislators were up there. They couldn't do anything to stop that. I know that the mayor of Philadelphia has to be mayor of Philadelphia. You, me, and all of us will elect people to go to Harrisburg and deal with the governor and deal with everybody. I know, because I've been there. There was a time in I was in Harrisburg, that not one penny would come through Philadelphia without coming through Senator Street, okay? People didn't wrap their arms around that. When Dr. Clayton came to Harrisburg for money for the schools, I just went colorblind.
And the light is red.
For the schools, right?
The light is red. Thank you, Mr. Street. All right. This issue has come up several times in some of your answers. What about the over 26% of Philadelphians who tonight in our city are living in poverty? That's double the national rate. So as mayor, how would you lift them out of poverty? Let's start with Senator Williams.
With me?
Senator Williams, and we'll work our way back.
I'm ready for that one.
The same way my father, my mother, and countless others in my family who grew out of poverty. Education. Status quo will not serve us and has not served us well before charter schools arrived. Philadelphia School District has been in perilous, challenging set of circumstances. Doesn't mean that we don't have good schools, we certainly do. But we have a lot of schools that unfortunately don't work for all families. We have to fix that educational experience, that the first rung in life is not rapping, not dribbling a basketball, not entertaining, but children look to a quality of life provided with them through an educated experience. We can do that, but we have to look past what we've done and look and face the bold changes that are in front of us and use them to every child's advantage, regardless of what neighborhood you live in, how much money you live in, what zip code surrounds you. The ability to move from poverty is proven in America. It's through public education.
Mr. Street.
Yes, I agree with public education, but I think we're talking about something within the moment. We need jobs now. Public education is evolution, slow, gradual change. We need revolution, quick change. We need jobs now.
How do you bring those jobs to that segment of the population?
You don't necessarily have to bring the jobs. We spend $40,000 a year to put a person in prison. If we go to prevention and not punishment, we can hire people in the community who are entry-level people, and this is what my program does, to patrol the community, to become and break down on the crime, to identify vacant houses, to have a relationship with the police that's going to create a quick response and prevention tool. Punishment doesn't work. We have to go with prevention. And by going with prevention, you're going to save hundreds and hundreds of young people who, once they're convicted of a felony, they are locked out of the workforce for a long period of time.
All right.
Now, I'm talking about the Philadelphia, I'm colorblind again. I'm talking about Philadelphia out there in the community, not Philadelphia in Center City. We have two Philadelphias, and let's make that very clear.
Milton Street, thank you so much. Doug Oliver, what's your plan for fighting this overwhelming poverty rate?
I'll pick up where Senator Street left off. We do, in fact, have two cities. We have those who have and those that don't. And I think the biggest barrier between those two groups is, in fact, education and jobs. The bridge, therefore, between those two groups is education and jobs. My platform for mayor is predicated upon education, job creation, and fairness. With respect to education, we can't have this conversation every year like we don't know the school season is about to start. We know that every August schools are beginning, yet we keep having this conversation about how we fund them as if it's a surprise. When we talk about job creation, we're talking about bringing those manufacturing, low-skilled jobs back to the city. We're talking about keeping homes affordable through weatherization so they don't get pushed out of the most affordable housing, which is the houses that you already own. We're talking about energy, we're talking about technology, we're talking about training. There are jobs that pay $25, $35 an hour right now that you can be prepared for with only 16 weeks training. If we as a city recognize that we've already failed a whole generation of Philadelphians and we start to make investments in them now, we can get them jobs in the short term, but the long-term solution will be fixing our schools.
Thank you. Mr. Kenny, what's your solution?
I think there's multiple ways we can attack this problem, and it's an insidious problem in our city because it holds us all back, including the people who are living in this poverty. Universal pre-K for all the children, 3 and 4 years of age, making our schools community schools again, centers of the community where people go for all types of services, not just for education on a daytime basis. I think we have to keep our young people out of trouble. And that's why I supported, I sponsored and passed the marijuana decriminalization bill, which kept 4,200 kids a year, is keeping 4,200 kids a year, 83% of those people of color, from being arrested for a de minimis activity that a lot of us did in high school and college that if we got arrested for then, we would have a different life now. Those kids are wind up, they cannot get financial aid for college, they cannot go in the military, they can't find a job, they can't keep a job, and they go to the corner and then they wind up in the poverty pipeline to prison. We also have to have a very robust reentry program for people coming back. Senator Street's right, we don't want them going back. We have to be prepared for them, and right now we're not prepared for them and their needs.
Mr. Diaz.
The first time I ever slept in a bed when I was 10 years old, when I was able to get public housing. I was in a rat-infested tenement. When I got into that, my body developed, and then I had the opportunity to develop and get an education. We don't look at the needs of each one of those kids and what they need before they can begin to study and be able to compete in the school. 40% of the people in the city move out every day to work outside the city, reverse transportation. I, for 45 years, have worked in the community to make things better. I've developed 3 community development corporations, and I'm not an elected official. I reformed public housing when I was general counsel at HUD, and I was not an elected official. You just got to look at MLK as an example of what I did throughout the country. I reformed the court system, and I was not authorized to give $100 million back to the city so that we could help Rendell with the bankruptcy period of time. And so I've been involved for 45 years trying to help our communities, and these folks who are elected officials vote the right way, but don't do anything about putting them skin into the game.
Thank you. For this next section, I just am looking for a yes or no answer so we can cover a lot of ground in a short period of time. So please keep that in mind. The answer would be yes or no. First off the bat, as mayor, would you want to see Police Commissioner Ramsey remain in the job? Yes or no, Mr. Diaz?
Yes, if he adopts the community policing.
There's a little extra to that yes.
Community
Let's
policing.
try to keep it yes or no. Mr. Kenny?
Yes.
Mr. Oliver?
Inappropriate.
No.
Mr. Williams?
Yes.
Do you favor approval of more charter schools? Mr. Diaz?
Not until the funding is settled.
So that's a no. As
Not
of right
until
now.
the funding is settled.
Mr. Kenny?
No.
Mr. Oliver?
If high performing.
No.
Better schools.
How can they be mayor and they don't understand yes or no?
We're going to give it another shot here.
This comes from the man who can't read a light is red. Can't give a one-word answer other than now. I mean,
right.
really? Seriously?
Okay, so we all have our little flaws here. Let's try for a yes or no to this
Sure.
one. Do you believe, and this is a serious question, that Philadelphia has a race relations problem, Mr. Diaz?
Yes.
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 Thank you. Let's talk about the current administration, the Nutter administration. Just curious what grade you would give the Nutter administration, A to F. Mr. Diaz?
Close to a D.
B plus.
A minus.
Mr. Street?
I'm sorry.
What grade would you give the current administration, A to F?
Triple F.
Senator Williams?
A in ethics and A in providing for stability financially.
All right, I give you a B on answering the with one letter
See,
grade.
I don't care. Really.
All right, gentlemen, really, we want to quickly move to your closing statements to give you a chance to sort of put a bow on this for our viewers at home and here in the audience. And we'll begin with you, Mr. Diaz.
Well, I want to thank you for the Chamber of Commerce for putting this together, and I guess you've seen the difference between ourselves. Some of us who have become born-again liberals, others who are still working on it. I have to tell you that it's what I want to do is I want to make the schools better. I want to create jobs that create opportunities for people like me to get into the middle class, and I want to make sure that we reduce crime. It's important that we see that element in our communities, and I got us into the race because of that. I gave up everything I have because I believe we can make life better for people in this city if we put our minds to it and if we work it together. Thank you very much. Muchas gracias por tenerme en este programa, y yo espero que todos voten por mí. I hope that you vote for me.
Gracias. Mr. Kenny.
Thank you very much. I was born and raised in the city, a son of a firefighter and a working mother, worked in the home and worked outside the home. I've been in government and politics for a long time. I've seen what works and what doesn't work, and I have the passion, the ability, and the desire and drive to make people's lives better. Unless we are in public service to make people's lives better, we're never going to be happy and we're never going to be successful. I spent my career doing it. I can continue to expand that opportunity to do it as mayor of the city of Philadelphia, and I can really appreciate your consideration on May 19th, and I want to thank you all for being here. It's great to see such a nice crowd. Thank you.
Doug Oliver.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you all tonight. I love my city, Philly born and raised. I'm running for mayor because I think this city really can use a different perspective to the challenge that's faced it for years. Ladies and gentlemen, our city is no longer the city that it's been. Bragging about 25, 30, 40 years of experience here doesn't do anything with respect to the new generations of Philadelphians that are here in this city. 50,000 new Philadelphians that are here, all under the age of 30. I know many would like to paint me as the guy who's running for mayor to be mayor of the young people, but the fact of the matter is it's not for young people, but it is very much about young people. If we're going to keep our word and our obligation to pensioners who've worked hard and want to retire on fixed incomes and still live in this city, then we've got to grow our tax base. The answer is with young people. I seek to represent their interests, but I seek to do it on behalf of the entire city. I thank you for the opportunity, and I ask that you consider me on May 19th.
Mr. Street.
Yes, I was here. I was born and raised in the Seventh-day Adventist Church right down here at 15th and Christian. I got my training in the Seventh-day Adventist Church. I was leader of the youth church. At 16 years old, I was preaching. I went on to school, and I got involved in politics, and I've done the heavy lifting. I've taken on the vendors. I've taken on housing issues. We've taken on the issues when they were dumping the money into the gallery that should have gone into the community. If I sound, and I want to say this to you, angry tonight, it's because I am. I'm very angry. Every morning I wake up, somebody else is shot dead, and nobody's doing everything about it. I read the report, and there's 200,000 people stopped with stop and frisk this year. Only 95%, over 95% of them had nothing wrong. There was no criminal activity.
Milton Street, thank you so much. Senator Williams.
I wasn't finished.
We're almost out of time.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
If you believe, as I believe, that every child in Philadelphia can learn, regardless of zip code or their family's income, if you believe, as I believe, that the dignity of work should be for anyone, regardless of whether they are reentering society or they're a high school dropout, or they have a high school degree, they're certified, or they have a college degree or an advanced degree, everyone should have that opportunity. If you believe, as I believe, that regardless of whether you're a police officer or a person who lives in the community, the dignity of peace, the experience of humanity is a part of our city. If you believe these things, as I believe these things, then we believe in one city. And we believe in a mayor who has that vision to draw people from the far northeast to southwest Philadelphia, to North Philadelphia, Center City, Rittenhouse Square, wherever it is, that you believe, as I believe, that the greatest years are in front of us. And I hope to be your mayor when that opportunity presents itself. Thank you very much.
Gentlemen, thank you so much for being here tonight. And we wish Lynn Abraham well. She is doing well. And we thank her for her participation tonight. Due to these unforeseen circumstances, we didn't get to hear more from her. But we thank you for watching this 2015 debate for Philadelphia mayor. Remember to cast your vote in this primary election 6 weeks from today on May 19th. I'll see you again tonight for NBC 10 News at 11 o'clock. Thanks for joining us here tonight.